Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody who is joining this webinar with us today. My name is Louisa Weiss. I am a member of the ICLEI Capacity Center at the ICLEI World Secretariat in Bonn. And I will facilitate this webinar for us today. We are still waiting for a couple of more participants to arrive. However, meanwhile, I am happy to give you a technical introduction to how we will use the system that you have logged into now. So, for the duration of the presentation given by my colleague Yunus Arikan, you will be muted. This means you cannot speak, but we are very happy to receive your questions, comments, or suggestions in a written form, so please just type them into the question box, and we will have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. We are then very happy to answer your questions or also engage in a discussion with you by unmuting you. Also, if you have technical problems, feel free to type them into the question box. I'm more than happy to assist you with those. I am now very delighted to introduce Yunus Arikan, who is the head of global policy and advocacy here at the ICLEI at the ICLEI World Secretariat. He is also the UNFCCC designated contact point for ICLEI and the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities to the constituency, to the UNFCCC. Yunus, whenever you're ready, we are very happy to listen to your presentation on the COP21 Agenda of local and subnational governments.
So, Louisa, many thanks for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues all around the world. It's really a great pleasure to have this couple of hours with you, hopefully not more than 1 hour, by the way, to take you through the expected agenda in the next 2 weeks in Paris for the 21st Conference of Parties. We have prepared a presentation which is around 15 slides, and we hope to give also the chance for a dialogue, as Louisa mentioned. You can see my presentation. The presentation will also be made available after this session on the home pages. So, first of all, the first thing is, of course, you're all aware of the very horrifying incidents occurred in Paris on Friday last week with the terrorist attacks costing lives of many innocent people. And the good news, at least immediately after, in a couple of hours, cities all around the world and many people have shared their solidarity with the city of Paris, people of France, and governments of France. I think this is at least what we could be proud, that the goodwill of the people for a better world is still much stronger than those who are attacking on that. So with this, we want to once again express our sorrow and condolences with the Parisians. So we hope that this will not create huge impacts in the preparations of the COP21, but in this presentation I'd like to once again underline that whatever we are now presenting here is the information that is available as of yesterday. And in fact, we even updated one of the slides because today there was a new update. The point is that, as you can imagine, the French government has announced a state of emergency at the moment, and they are currently discussing appropriate measures to ensure security and smooth implementation of COP21 agenda. And as you see in this picture, it is one of the most widely participated COP in terms of both the activities and the number of participants. Of course, it creates additional complexities in terms of a number of logistical challenges. And there was an initial announcement yesterday that some of the events may be revised. and we don't know the extent. There has not been any official announcement yet. So what we are pretending or presenting to you is as if all these things are planned as of before Friday. And we'd like to remind once again that we will please recommend you to check the websites, updates, emails, Twitters, in order to receive the final updated revisions and update announcements. So if we go to the details. Now, as I said, this is the 21st time the national governments are meeting, but it's unique in many sense. We had been, as local and subnational governments, participating since 1995, and we have always hosted a number of events. But this year in Paris, we have the largest and the widest diversity of participation. So we would like to put in the heart of all our engagements two special events. The one is on the advocacy base for 2 weeks in the green zone, Le Bourget climate generation space, which is called Cities and Regions Pavilion. And this will be the daily meeting point for a number of events. We will go through it again. During this 2 weeks, the most important event we will have is the Climate Summit for Local Leaders, which is hosted by City of Paris as Mayor of Hidalgo and UN Special Envoy for Climate and Cities and Climate Change, Michael Bloomberg, as the co-hosts. This will take place on the 4th of December, Paris City Hall. These two places are the opportunities for local and subnational governments to gather their delegations and agree on their positions, make announcements, so that they provide the maximum input to the official negotiations, which will take place throughout these 2 weeks. The second part of the event that we will be focusing on is the spatial meetings of the networks of cities and regions in Paris. Because of the convening power of such a number of diversity, every network is somehow having their own internal governance meetings or consultation meetings. So now, other than that, we have two types of blue zone events. And when we say blue zone, here is the graph that shows the location of the venues. The blue zone is the place where literally the negotiations take place. Decisions are adopted, all the meetings are taking place, and side events and spatial events are taking place as well. Access to Yunus' blue zone is spatial. It has to be through the accredited organizations or national parties. There is another space called green zone, and this is the place where it's free of UNFCCC registration, so this is, in theory, access. The public access to the public have access to this space. So in the blue zone, what we have is two types of events. One is the regular interactions we have in the typical negotiations. We make interventions, we participate in side events, but this year an additional agenda is available, which is the Lima Paris Action Agenda, which is an initiative since the last COP in Lima, is a collaboration of French, Peruvian governments and the UN and the UNFCCC Secretariat. We will go through that as well. And then the last part of group of events we have is any events taking place in Paris where there is an agenda for local and subnational governments, either as a speaker or a participant. So with this, I'd like to start with the blue zone, the highlights of the blue zone. As we said, this is an accreditation limited space. The unique thing that is applying for the first time in the history of UNFCCC is that those political leaders of local and subnational governments and parliamentarians will now be recognized with their names as titles: mayor, governor, premier, commissioner. But this is only applying for the highest level. Even the deputies are not eligible. And this is a unique opportunity that the Secretariat has provided us based on our consultations and based on our dialogues with them for so many years, in order to demonstrate the spatial role that local and subnational governments can play in the process, and we really appreciate this additional support to our constituency. Those who are registered through parties can also be nominated with this indication, so it's also important for you to know. But this is only as an authority under the LGMA members and the parties. The Leaders event, this is a unique event this year in the COP. It's on the first day, 30th of November, heads of state, or over 100 heads of state are confirmed. They will not negotiate, which was the case in Copenhagen, but they will provide a political input, and they will provide the political momentum so that the negotiators are inspired, and the outcome is really the one that globally everybody is looking for. On that day, green zone is closed, and access to university blue zone is also restricted. So even you have a blue zone access, you may not be eligible, and further information can be followed later on. After the first day, there will be official negotiations on the ADP, which is the draft agreement and decisions. This will finish on the 5th of December, Saturday. This does not mean that negotiations will finish, but in case there are any pending issues that the parties could not agree on the negotiator level, starting from the second week onwards, ministers will take on the charge, and they will adopt serious decisions that needs really political level of commitment, we assume. Let's hope that the number of issues that will be left to ministers will be as minimum as possible, so that they can also proceed smoothly, and we all come to 11th of December with fruitful outcomes. Throughout these 2 weeks, we will have, as the constituency, daily briefings on the first week and second week. These will all take place in the green zone. The good news is that you don't need to have a UNFCCC badge, which means that you can participate as much as possible based on the logistics of the room that we are meeting in, which has a capacity of 50, I guess. There will be some opportunities, but the most important one, the high-level segment, which is addressed to the ministers. This will be on the 8th of December, Tuesday afternoon. During this COP meeting since 2013, we are also having a special dialogue with the negotiators under the brand called Friends of Cities. Excuse me. This would be held on the first week and on the Tuesday of the first week at 2 o'clock, and the second week on the Monday, 7th of December at 10 o'clock, again in the green zone. And the Lima Paris Action Agenda is an initiative, as we mentioned, the presidencies. And it is consisting of 12 thematic focus and 1 high-level action day on the 5th. Each of those focus areas are presented with a special event, either 3 or 6 hours, and plus a press conference and specific deliverables announced. In the case of cities and subnational working group, we are expecting to announce under the LPA leadership and with the engagement of all partners, a Paris action statement and a 5-year work plan, and probably this will be announced soon publicly ahead of the COP. So if you look at this bird's eye view now, let's go into the details. This is week by week calendar. As you can see, we have the agenda in the pavilion, which we'll go through later on. Then we will have special events and the Blue Zone events and the LPAA events. In terms of the first week of the negotiations or COP, as you can notice, a number of meetings are heavily involved outside the negotiation area, mainly at the City Hall. And we have UNESCO Water and Megacities Conference, Transport Day, and this is a 4 days event on the UNESCO headquarters between 1st and 4th of December. On Sunday, when the UNFCCC and pavilion is closed, we have Transport Day and World Climate Summit. You can see also the other schedules of the meetings as well. In the second week, the first differentiation is that we are heavily involved in the Blue Zone. We have most of our side events in the UNFCCC official zone and in the party pavilions on the Monday and Tuesday. So you can think that the Monday and Tuesday will be the highest number of representatives of local and subnational governments in the Blue Zone. In particular, on Monday, the UNFCCC side events, as well as party pavilions like EU Pavilion, China Corner, US Center. They will all be including a number of events. The full list of UNFCCC official side events we will also upload on the web, but this can give you the full basic picture. And we have mentioned that on the 8th of December is the most important day for us. This will be the cities and subnationals in the morning. Hopefully there will be exciting outcomes coming out of the year-round consultations. Here is the recent update that we just heard from the social media, and we immediately inserted today's presentation. As you have seen, for every LPAA session, there is a pre-conference or press conference before the official session, and then there is around 3 hours of events here. And you have seen on the Saturday 5th is the biggest action day. One thing we have to maybe think about is that there is a slight difference between the 5th event and the others, because the event on the 5th is in fact a decision from last COP in Lima, but the other events are initiatives of under LPAA. So there is a slight notion, but the spirit is the same, to accelerate action and raise ambition. So the Climate Summit for Local Leaders will be held on the 4th of December at the Paris City Hall. It is co-hosted by Mayor of Paris and Michael Bloomberg, and it's a global it has received a global endorsement from many local and subnational government networks from Europe and globally. This is the largest global mobilization of local and subnational governments, their networks and leaders since the start of their first climate summit in 1993. So we had been having this kind of summit in every COP almost, but this is the largest and the most impressive in terms of the deliverables and the number of mobilization, and the largest coalition as such in terms of the unification of the networks. It consists of a grand opening, and there is a thematic sessions in the high-level dialogues both in the morning and afternoon. The outcomes will be a Paris City Hall declaration, and there will be a compilation of 21 solutions on adapt, curb, and engage, which are the themes that the local action is much more focused, and you would find those documents soon on online available as well. During the event, we will also have updates on the implementation of Compact of Mayors, Compact of States and Regions, and other initiatives in terms of their compliance and their progress. And there will be also specific announcements in terms of any new initiative or any new partnership that will be coming up. This is one full day, but throughout 2 weeks we will be immediately in the green zone, starting from the first day until the end. And you have seen here is the basic structure of the pavilion. Let's recall that a similar, let's say, context was repeated, or it was for the first time experienced in Copenhagen in 2009. There was a local government climate launch, but the Cities and Regions Pavilion, after 7 or 8 years or 6 years, it has much more in terms of professionalism and in terms of the way the sessions are organized and the way the partners are engaged. So we are proud that we are building on our very positive legacy from Copenhagen, and we're advancing, and this is something that we should be all proud of, I guess. As we said, this is in the green zone, and it is the largest single pavilion in the whole climate generation space, and the agenda as of today is 95% ready. So you can also see a full list of partners here. I'll not go to each of it, but here are the highlights of those 2 weeks. So we have more than 100 public and closed meetings, networking events and workshops hosted by more than 35 partners. We are, as of today, more than 850 participants registered to the sessions, and this list of participants includes more than 200 mayors and local and subnational leaders worldwide, which demonstrates the power and the ambition and the strength of our community. We will have the daily briefings here. There will be special Transformative Actions program sessions, which was an initiative with a group of networks where we have worked during the year, that we are sure that after Paris the most important thing is implementation, and we are trying to demonstrate that we have a huge potential at the local and subnational level, and we have asked members of ICLEI, members of other networks, to develop their proposals and applications, and these are now grouped, and in every regional session there will be around 15 minutes of presentation either by the mayor or the representative, and there will be of course a dialogue. Especially the goal is that how much of those potential potentials can be materialized, can be put in practice after Paris, so that we can say that yes, the world has tapped the potential of local and subnational action. We also have special guests like Jeffrey Sachs, Sir David King, and Jeremy Rifkin to be confirmed. Throughout these 2 weeks, there are certain highlights. 5th of December, in response to the high-level action day, also will be the high-level segment of our pavilion. We will have a number of announcements praising our achievements from US to Copenhagen, from procurement to eco-mobility. We will cover a broad diversity of events. On the second week, we will touch upon the financing and 100% renewable initiatives as well. One important point is that you cannot see the full agenda here because it was not possible to present in one slide. We recommend you to immediately go and register yourself to Cities and Regions Pavilion so that you can be updated about any new news coming up during and before the COP. You can also see day by day, week by week, all the program. And you can also, if loaded, the session descriptions of each event as of today so that you can see who is speaking, who is coming, and what will be the themes to be discussed in the events. The pavilion is strongly connected to the Transformative Actions program, as we mentioned. These projects, we wanted to be slightly different than what has happened up to date. It is mainly forward-looking visions. We asked our colleagues from cities and regions to be ambitious, to be cross-cutting, and to be inclusive, and the applications have all demonstrated how they are reaching these specific goals. And we are proud to inform you that we have received 125 applications from 88 cities and 3 small island states. And as you can see, from Reykjavik to Durban, from Vancouver to Seoul, all around the world, the world has mobilized, and we believe this would also be continuing because all the partners were very, very satisfied with the mobilization, and everybody is excited that we can now concretely come to every COP with our progress in terms of how much we're advancing. In order to give an idea of what do we mean by transformative actions, we have worked with North Pas-de-Calais region, and they are one of the, in fact, they are the first applicant, and they are hosting a special day on the 3rd of December, and there will be a TGV, the fast train, taking participants from Gare du Nord to North Pas-de-Calais. There will be a series of events, and you would notice how a former coal-dependent region can turn into an eco-civilization. And this was an inspiration by Jeremy Rifkin, and through its third industrial revolution, you would see on ground how the transformation is taking place and how we could be positive and hopeful about future, provided that all these kind of initiatives are appropriately resourced and recognized. These are the last couple of slides of my presentation. While we are, of course, extremely happy to demonstrate our actions and motivations, the core of the climate summit, of course, is a negotiation. And without an outcome from the process, our activities would have limited impact. Therefore, we should also have a look at what's going on into the negotiations. As of today, what we can say is since the beginning of the year, when the parties agreed on a new negotiation track, we said that this should be having 3 main outcomes. First, it should advance global negotiations, which means there should be an inclusive and ambitious climate regime by COP21. It should enhance vertical integration, and it should support effective multi-level governance, because we are now aware that the whole climate regime is turning into a bottom-up effort, mainly driven by national actors. And in that sense, of course, local and subnational actors are their best partners, and they can also be inspired and supported by the ambitions of the local and subnational governments. And in turn, those who have not been involved in the climate action so far, the national INDCs or the policies can be integrated to the local action all around the world. So this has to come into effect. And we also said the third area of action is to accelerate our own bottom-up initiatives through our strengthened partnerships. If we look at the negotiations from this perspective, what we can say as of today, did we reach an inclusive regime? It is partly and very likely yes. We are confident. One of the reasons is that The draft agreement, preamble paragraph 14, makes a spatial recognition of local and subnational governments and non-state actors, but it also makes a distinction between these two. And the good news is that this is not a bracketed text, which means nobody is rejecting this notion. This is important because a preambular text in agreement, which will define the next 2 decades of climate action, gives us the confidence that this vision will be implemented in further COP decisions. So this is what we have been asking for, and we are very happy parties have responded positively. The thing that is not unclear in terms of inclusiveness is the workstream 2 in raising pre-2020 ambition. There has been a long debate for a long years and through the workstream 2 on the ADP technical meetings and the Lima Paris Action Agenda. The discussion has finally reached a good conclusion. There is a spatial section called non-party stakeholder engagement, which refers to both local and subnational governments and non-state actors. There is also another vision on high-level dialogues, this ministerial mayoral events. The good news is that these are all on the table, but they are bracketed, which means that some parties have already expressed concern. And let's hope that the next 5 days of negotiation or the 2 weeks will solve these so that the texts at the end will not be less ambitious than what we have at the moment. There's another part of inclusiveness. What we are also very happy to see that around 50% of all submitted INDCs have a vision for action at the local and subnational level. Of course, each country has a difference in terms of the scale and the ambition, but this is clear that everybody, I mean, let's say 50% of the INDCs have such a vision. This is making us extremely excited, and there are really some innovative practices like Canada, Colombia, Mexico, US, China, Brazil, India. These countries and many others have demonstrated how they would like to work with their local and subnational governments or to accelerate action at this level. So we are looking forward to speed up these efforts and implement these goals as soon as possible. However, when we look at the ambitious, this is a bit more, let's say, not so clear, or it's a bit unclear because there's still not clarity as of today what will be the long-term goal. Will there be a date for peaking emissions? Will there be a global carbon neutrality or 100% renewables target by the latest of 2050? Will there be a vision on adaptation? Will there be a robust regime for loss and damage, imagining that we are heading towards a 3 degrees almost global warming, which is already clear that there will be more climate-related damages or disasters. So we will have to assess the Paris package based on these 2 criteria, which is inclusiveness and ambitious, and we hope we can all welcome a very inclusive and ambitious regime at the end. Having said that, this is our last slide, in fact. Whatever the result of Paris, whatever the scale of success, there is one thing for sure. The local government climate roadmap, which started in 2007, which was asking for a recognition, engagement, and empowerment of local and subnational governments, we can claim that we are almost, we have reached our targets, and almost all our targets are reached, and we can easily say mission accomplished. What the evidence is that we already have COP decisions in 2010 and 2013 recognizing our role. We also have been engaged in an unprecedented level through the ADP process, also with the ministerial mayor dialogues in Cancun, Warsaw, Lima, and hopefully in Paris. We now have special badges from the UNFCCC. We have a Nazca platform which demonstrates all our commitments, and there is a strong LPAA dialogue and spirit, and we have the INDCs which refer to our role and engagement. And in terms of empowerment, we also are proud to see that now the financing mechanism of the convention, which is the Global Environment Facility, is announced now, the first integrated action program on sustainable cities, which has significant amount of resources which has not been mobilized before. And there are others. Cities and Climate Finance Leadership Alliance is expected to announce new initiatives and new efforts. Other than climate, we also have achieved huge progress in the post-2015 development agenda, especially in Sendai disaster risk reduction, in Addis Ababa financing for climate, financing for development, and in sustainable development goals with a special goal on cities, on goal 11. We already have reached to this kind of hints, and then if we assess what was the situation in 2007, definitely we are much better off. But that brings us to the next level, which is, of course, will be discussed later on with all the partners. But we would hope that the next phase of our efforts should focus on raising ambition and accelerate action at all levels, all around the world. With this, I am concluding our presentation. Here is the links for you. As we said, it will be online. The links will also be on the cities and regions pavilion. And I will not go into details, but I'd like to conclude by expressing our sincere appreciations to all individuals and organizations who have contributed restlessly in all these efforts since 1993 in New York. We have been following this process. We have been mobilizing so many mayors who are not anymore mayors, so many prime ministers who became mayors, so many citizens who were just an NGO but now a leader in their local and subnational community or their government. So these achievements, what we have addressed today, is in fact a result of this fantastic spirit and cooperation. And in fact, what we will celebrate here is this decades of collaborative and globally coordinated action. And we believe that will strengthen us more in terms of the next phase of climate action, because this united voice of local and subnational governments is something that really makes everybody happy, and everybody is excited, because everybody knows that if there will be a sustainable future in the urban world of 2050s or the 21st century, it definitely has to go through cities and regions of the world. And with this, I'd like to conclude and thanking your patience and interest. I know it was a bit condensed and probably I was also a bit fast, but now we have around 25 minutes of dialogue and exchange of ideas, questions and remarks. From now, Laura, I would like to, Louisa, I would like to ask your support in terms of facilitating this dialogue. Of course.
Thank you very much, Yunus, first of all, for this very informative presentation. Yes, as you saw, we have a question, or actually several questions from Laura regarding traveling to COP21 and any impacts from the terrorist attacks. First of all, that's her first question.
Well, Laura is one of those friends whom we have been working for so many years. Laura from Brazil, she has been leading ICLEI office for many years. Great to hear you joining us, Laura. Yes, as you have noticed, I did not touch on that, but obviously we're expecting a kind of a revised plan for logistics. As of today, we don't want to create conspiracies, but definitely both visa and access may be limited, but let's wait and see at this stage. Was this?
There was a short interruption in the audio.
I'm not sure. Okay, just let me repeat then. Definitely there will be impacts on participation. We think Blue Zone will not be impacted because it's the UN area, but anything in the city center and anything in the Green Zone may be revised, but we don't want to speculate on that. We want to respect the decisions of the French government and the UNS's Secretariat and the City of Paris, but you can expect there may be some revisions, both in terms of capacity and some events may be cancelled. Let's cross fingers. The City Hall event is saved. Just to let you know, by the way, today there was a letter announced on the Climate Summit for Local Leaders, signed by Mayor Bloomberg, former Mayor Bloomberg, and UN Special Envoy. I'm just typing while talking, which is encouraging all the world's local and subnational leaders to consider they should come to Paris and support Mayor Hidalgo to demonstrate that we are united. And we would hope that this message would echo in the decision makers so that we will ensure that there will be a secured summit. So that's what I can say at this stage.
Thank you very much, Yunus, for answering this question. Laura also asked a more individual question about her possible admission. Maybe you can answer that in an email to her? Or do you want to?
Well, maybe just at the moment, we are all expecting there may be some logistical challenges. So in theory, the summit is open for only local and subnational leaders, plus one of their aides. Any observer participation will depend on the logistics, I think the capacity and the security. But it may be possible that it may not be too many people involved as observer.
Okay, so that was on the possibility to participate in an observer role. Then we have a question from Colleen Scanlon-Lyon.
Yes, I see that you're referring, Colleen, to the Governance Climate and Forest Task Force. One thing that we are aware, we have among the partners of the summit as the Climate Group, Energy for SD, who have been actively involved in the summit organization, and R20. They are doing their best to mobilize, in particular, subnational leaders. So they are discussing with City of Paris, I think. One thing you can consider is that the Climate Group would also have their General Assembly on the Monday, as far as we know. That could also be an opportunity for you. And in the pavilion, we have also a number of events that is led by regions globally, so that could also be an opportunity. But for the summit itself, we have to wait for the final decision of the City of Paris and the organizing committee.
Thank you, Yunus. The next question comes from Tamila Fish. She is wondering about whether if a binding agreement is not achieved, will the negotiations continue or will the world wait until next year?
Well, this is a million-dollar question. I can definitely say that I wouldn't like to be in the shoes of any negotiator at this stage. It is one of the hardest responsibility, I assume. Of course, the climate action will not stop, especially in the case of local and subnational. Just let's recall, if you look at those photos, let me show you. This is a photo from 1993, the first Municipal Leaders Summit. There was no UNFCCC, there was no COP, there was nothing, but there were municipal action. So we are not necessarily bounded by the global agreement because we have authorities. We would go ahead. Of course, we would like to have more resources. We would be much comfortable in a global setting, but if there is nothing, if this is the reality of the world, we will act accordingly. But it is too early to make a speculation. And one thing I would like to refer to Christiana Figueres, who is the leader of the Climate Secretariat. She is a magnificent person in terms of providing a positive momentum to the process, and she was always saying that this is unstoppable. Whether with a deal or without a deal, the road towards a new civilization, a low-carbon world, a more climate-friendly development is now in practice. And the question is that whether there will be a legally frame to craft it. If not now, then later on. But definitely this process is started. There's no way back. It's just like the question of another type of revolution in the past. They didn't wait for all the stones to finish the Stone Age. This is exactly the same. The low carbon future, renewables future is coming in practice, and the question is how fast we can do that.
Thank you very much. Maybe in that context, I'd like to read out the question from Bob Long. He's asking how youth are involved in the development of the final text.
Well, as far as I know, youth has already scheduled their summit, and they have been also very active. There is a special youth day. They have been one of the most active constituencies. They are also expressing their views in terms of the agreement, what should be the elements of an agreement. And we, as both ICLEI and local governments, we have also been active very, very much with the youth constituency, both in Rio Plus 20. Even in recent UN summit in New York, we had a Youth and Mayors Forum. And the opening of our pavilion on the second day will also have a youth delegation joining us. So youth is active, they are pushing, they are also putting in practice peaceful demonstrations, stunts. This is the hope for the world. There is a discussion to continue to host the People's Climate March on the 29th. I think they agreed to go ahead, and there will probably be the march, but we can see how it will practically be implemented. So youth is very actively contributing to the consultations.
Wonderful. Then we have more questions concerning access to the events. One comes from our colleague Megan Meany. She's asking if the climate summit for local leaders is open by invitation only.
Yes, special invitation letters are circulated both directly by the City Hall and Bloomberg Philanthropies or our organizers, and also as well as the networks. People can also access by registering themselves to the summit itself. At the moment, there is a registration page available, but the final decision lies in the hands of City of Paris and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Because of several restrictions, security and capacity, they may not be able to accept everybody.
Okay, then there's a question from Vanessa Gutierrez from the Metropolitan District of Quito. She's also asking if there's any chance for a blue zone accreditation through the ICLEI World Secretariat.
Yes, we are honored to have Veronica Arias, Secretary of Environment of Quito, who is on behalf of Mayor Mayor of Quito. I cannot remember by her name. I'm very sorry. Mayor Rodas, sorry. And she will be with us throughout the 2 weeks of the UNFCCC Blue Zone delegation of ICLEI. And if there's any additional, we can discuss with you bilaterally. According to our limitations, we can explore, so feel free to reach us. But Secretary of Environment Veronica Arias will definitely be with us.
Right, then I have another question from my colleague Evgenia. I think I would like to unmute her since her question is rather complex. Jenny, would you like to pose your question to Yunus?
Yes, can you hear me well? Hello?
Evgenia, are you with us?
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Great. I just have a brief question. Could you please briefly summarize why we are actively seeking to include loss and damage and climate financing in the agreement? And if an agreement on those two thorny subjects is not reached in December, then will we as local governments consider the agreement weak?
Thanks, Evgenia. If this is not the $1 million, this is probably the $10 million question. And unfortunately, the reality is that the world should be prepared for more disasters. The question that we are answering in Paris and beyond is that how much we can minimize this to occur and how much we can prevent the Earth climate to reach to a tipping point of a no return. Because as scientists have been showing us that some Earth systems, once they are over their equilibrium, even if we shut all the cars or shut down all the factories or close all the power plants, we cannot prevent some of the changes. And this is especially the case for ocean acidification and pH balance, as well as the tundras in the Siberia. So everybody is doing their best that the warming does not reach to this level. This means that as long as we can prevent, this does not mean that we will never have disasters. We will have. Therefore, there is already an issue. Okay, yes, we are adapting ourselves. Our mayors, our cities are preparing their adaptation plans, but disasters are happening. Whatever you do, it will come. Of course, it is minimizing our losses, but at the end there will be some losses. And how this will be processed, what will be the mechanisms to assess, how will we account, and how will we recover, and what will be the processes will that be Will this be clear in an agreement? That is the question. And as you have said, this is thorny because there is one position by some parties that there should be nothing on the table. There should be nothing on the agreement regarding loss and damage, which is, of course, especially for developing countries, a huge concern, because they are saying that, yes, we could not achieve mitigation, and if we cannot guarantee any loss and damage, what is in it for us to sign this agreement? As I said, I wouldn't like to be in the shoes of any negotiators in this stage. Therefore, it's a question of how much sacrifices and how much consensus they will see. And climate financing is also a discussion, because everybody's talking about 100 billion, but there's also a reality that there is so much money flowing outside the world other than the climate funds, and those money should also be tapped into the potential of those resources. For example, the monies that will be divested from fossil fuel investments or fossil fuel subsidies, that could be also additional source of financing, and how this new agreement will give a vision to that. And the same question, if we don't receive, if we are forced to adopt commitments as developing countries, if we don't have any capacities to adopt, and if we don't have any additional resources to support our commitments, then why are we here? So let's see. Once again, maybe you can think about, I mean, the international processes are interesting. There is one international process which literally, or intergovernmental process, which literally failed, and that is the World Trade Agreements. And as you can remember, that was a result of the mobilizations in the early 2000s. Now, the world does not have a World Trade Agreement, but there are Trans-Pacific, transatlantic partnerships, which is trying to fill the gap. And then you are following how it is difficult. When there is not a global deal, it is really hard, because when it comes to regional and bilateral agreements, it is not able to guarantee that the result is as equally as global and effective. So these are the costs and benefits, but definitely, for sure, after Paris, there will not be a stop to the action. But the question is that how difficult it would be, or how easy it would be. That is the question we should answer. We will answer.
Thank you so much, Yunus. I have another question from Konrad van Ritter. He is asking if there will be an event specially focusing on climate finance for cities and NAMAs, with a strong city focus.
Yes, greetings to Konrad. He's also a long friend of ICLEI, and he's a passionate supporter of the local and subnational governments and innovative financing, and he has been, wherever capacity he has been supporting this. So we're very happy to have you, and thanks for raising this issue, Konrad. Especially in the case of Cities and Regions Pavilion, on Monday the 7th, we have a side event, or a special event of AFT, which is one of the biggest partners of the pavilion. And on the same day, immediately after AFT event, we will have an event of the Cities and Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, and there will be some workshops over how to roll out these initiatives on climate finance. It's not necessarily specifically directly focusing on NAMAs, but NAMAs would be one of the pipelines that we wish additional projects should be seen as options. One thing I'm sure Konrad knows very well, but it would be good to share with our friends. One of the weaknesses of the Kyoto Protocol, or this phase, was that those mechanisms, flexibility mechanisms, was not too much favoring of the local and subnational action, because of procedures, because of conditionalities. And this nationally appropriate mitigation actions was an initiative of COP21 in Indonesia, in Bali, has rolled out, especially in the developing countries, very well. And if you look at the NAMA pipeline, around 30% of those projects, either in force or being on the pipeline, is driven or proposed by local and subnational actors. That gives the notion that if we design the processes appropriately, local and subnational governments can definitely benefit from the global funds. Let's recall, in the Kyoto era, in the CDM, the contribution or the share of the local and subnationals were not more than 10%. So this demonstrates that appropriate mechanisms is the key to ensure success. So NAMAs, vertical integrated NAMAs, urban NAMAs, all these questions would definitely have to discuss. And we believe the Cities and Climate Finance Leadership Alliance and the TAP presentation, some of the TAP presentations, as far as I know, for example, from Latin America TAP time, we have Chile de Santiago, NAMA, as a TAP application. So we will have a number of events. Conrad, I recommend you to go through the daily agenda of each sessions, but we can also share with you, because you can also download the full agenda. You can track the events from the titles, but we can also engage you actively in the discussions as well.
Thank you, Yunus. We had 2 raised hands, but I'm not sure if there are still questions. Bob Long raised his hand. Bob, do you still want to add something to the discussion?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. And we had Maya Crabtree. Do you want to pose a question to us? Hello, Maya. We have unmuted you, so if you want, you can ask your question. No. Okay. Then
Well, I know Maya from, I think she's from Forum 15 of Israeli Networks of Local Governments.
That's
correct,
yeah.
I received their emails a couple of days ago. We were very excited to have them interested. They are one of the active networks in Israel. We look forward to welcome them in the pavilion, in the Compact of Mayors. So Maya, we can also follow up bilaterally if you like.
Good. Then I have another question from Laura Macedo. Will there be a speech by a local leader at the plenary? And if so, besides Paris, who would that be?
Well, thanks, Laura. It's one of the seasoned negotiators' question because you have been following all the COPs for so many years. Laura, the good news is that we have more than one speech by a local leader at the plenary, because in the past we were always limited to just 2 minutes at the end when there was no one in the room, as you can remember. So this the Lima Paris Action Agenda is now enabling us to create enormous opportunities of interactions. There will be in the Blue Zone both the plenary events. It will not be the biggest room, but it will be one of the best promoted and most best secured place. There will be a number of speakers from local and subnational governments to share their practices. I cannot give you the names as of today, but for sure you would see a number of ambitious representatives. There will be a high-level segment on this Tuesday, and there will be also press conferences, and there will also be side events. As you know, this is, of course, side events are already been taking place, but in the UNFCCC negotiation rooms, there will be a lot of negotiators who are also engaging with local and subnational governments. And I see your next question, whether Brazilian local leaders are accredited as a party. Yes, this has been a practice of the Brazilian government for a long while. And once again, this year, the Brazilian government is mobilizing a number of leaders from mega cities and states under the party delegation, and we look forward to welcome them and engage in the activities both in the summit and the pavilion and the UNFCCC. The good news as well is that this year there are more and more countries who are mobilizing their national delegations with local government representatives, local and subnational government representatives. For example, United States of America is one of those really, really ambitious delegations. I think they are bringing around more than 15 mayors all around the US. And we're very happy. The US is also collaborating with the State Department on that. Same, of course, to South Africa or Chinese government also bringing all these low carbon pilot cities, local leaders as well. So we would see at the moment when we say this 200 plus, that was our assessment that overall in the whole 2 weeks we can exceed around 300 or so if all goes okay. which will be highest number of local and subnational government leaders, not the staff, leaders representative, because staff is more even. And the good news is that this new procedure of the Secretariat now will enable us to track how many are attending, at least in the blue zone. And once again, there are some representatives who will not have blue zone access. Therefore, we would also start to release this list of mayors who would be in Paris. I think this would be one of the most consolidated lists that we would see. But all around the world, we are expecting around 300 or so. Yes, we will be eager to see the new president of Argentina, Laura. Of course, we cannot guess at this stage, but you're following more equally. And the mayor of Buenos Aires is one of the most strongly, let's say, competing candidate. Actually, there are two candidates because of the procedure of the presidential elections. Who knows? Maybe we can welcome Mayor Macri as the president of Buenos Aires at the high-level segment. And there will be a number of interesting things. For example, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau is also having a lot of interesting dialogues with his local and subnational leaders. Those who are familiar with the COPs, they can recall in 2007, the Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, who changed the position of the Australian government to a climate-friendly one, and he ratified the Kyoto Protocol. He was welcomed with a huge applause and enthusiasm. I think the Canadian Prime Minister and many leaders around the world who are already demonstrating ambitious action would receive the same applaud and welcome from both parties and the civil society. At the end of the day, this is a logical way to go forward if we are talking about a safer future, of course.
All right. Thank you very much, Yunus, for answering all these questions. Thanks to all of you for the interesting questions and your engagement in the discussion. So, in this moment, I do not see any more raised hands or questions posed. If you want to add something, last chance to raise your hand. But as far as I can judge, I think we are fine. There's a final question from Vanessa Gutierrez. She would like to know if there's a possibility of financing the ticket to Paris for a mayor or a mayor's replacement.
Well, we are exploring a number of options. There are certain resources available for the participation of mayors only. In case of no show of a mayor, we are having some relative difficulties, but we're in touch bilaterally with Quito, and we are also happy to continue to discuss with Vanessa as well. We wish to do our best, but resources are always limited in such cases.
Thank you, Yunus, for answering also this question. And
I just would like to once again highlight all those participants, even if you're not attending to Paris or not visiting Paris, please consider to register yourself to Cities and Regions Pavilion. You can indicate that you're not traveling, but you'd like to receive updates, because there will be daily digest, which will summarize the outcomes of today and then sharing the agenda of the other day. That could keep you informed, and you can expect to hear all these upcoming announcements as quick as possible. And we once again would like to thank you very much for all your interest, and look forward to meeting those who are able to come to Paris. And in January, we will also make an assessment of the outcomes. Hopefully, we will be sharing some good news as well. So have a nice day to all of you.
yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Yunus, for your presentation and this nice question and answer session. I want to remind you that the webinar and presentation will be online on the ICLEI global website and the Cities and Regions Pavilion website that you see on the screen now. And with that, we conclude. Thank you all for attending. Have a good evening, afternoon, or morning.